Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome in to the Tuesday, May 2nd edition of the Fantasy Roundup. I'm your host, Spencer the Guru Urquhart. Alongside me is Gabe Henderson. We are brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. Make sure to go sign up with Caesars if you haven't already. And I don't know about you, Gabe, but I'm ready to recap this NFL draft.
Oh, me too. I've been sitting it's been stewing in my brain for the last few days. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, theme of today's show is to begin our breakdown of post-draft landing spots for the fantasy relevant NFL rookies. We're going to go position by position, going pretty in-depth, so we're going to do one position per week for the next few weeks. We're going to start off with the quarterback position, be the theme of today's show. So should be fun there. And before we get to that, make sure to subscribe to the Bayou Bets YouTube channel if you haven't already. Really appreciate everyone that rocked with us during the draft. We had a really big crowd for that. So really appreciate everyone. I was down there in Metairie at the Saints facility. Had a lot of fun there. And Jerry's in the building. Good afternoon, Jerry. And I always appreciate Jerry and company tuning in. I know y'all got a lot of thoughts on the Saints draft, but y'all are able to give y'all the grades yesterday, which we might have a little bit of Saints draft talk sprinkled in here. But for now, we're going to get into these fantasy headlines. So we got a few headlines here. Nothing too crazy, but a few things to talk about besides the draft, because our main theme is the draft. We'll get a few headlines here outside of that. Packers have signed Jordan Love through 2024. It was a little different than the fifth-year option. It was essentially picking up his fifth-year option, but a little different as far as they signed him to an extension as opposed to paying him the exact amount of the option. I think there's some incentives mixed in there. So considering he hadn't started much, he's going to have to earn it a little bit. He didn't just give him the full deal. And I think Daniel's in here. Appreciate you tuning in, Daniel. And Jerry giving the Saints an A+. Wow, Jerry really optimistic about the Saints draft. Hope you are correct in that assessment. The Chiefs making moves today. Re-signed Jerick McKinnon, and as a result, declined Clyde Edwards-Helaire's fifth-year option. No surprise there. CEH. Just not a good fit for the Chiefs. I was wrong about that one. I thought he'd fit like a glove over there, but he has been a bust, let's be honest. It's not been pretty for Clyde Edwards-Helaire and the Chiefs, but Jerick McKinnon has fit very well over there as the third down back. And the Mariners making a move, called up their top pitching prospect, Bryce Miller, to make a start today against the A's. Looking like Miller's going to get to keep that spot considering Robbie Ray is out for the season there in Seattle. And as far as the NBA, got a couple of superstars banged up. Jimmy Butler, game time decision for tonight's contest against the Knicks with an ankle injury. And then Joel Embiid, doubtful for game 2. 76ers were able to pull the upset in game 1. But, man, it's going to be tough for them to keep that going without their top scorer.
Yeah, for sure. You just got to rely on James Harden to hopefully show up and do what he did again. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Given playoff Harden history, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're about to have a really good show talking about these rookies. But speaking of basketball, we've got some DFS for y'all. Before we get to that, Gabe, I'd like to switch back to the headlines here and get your thoughts on this Jordan Love thing. We talked about Aaron Rodgers last week. The Aaron Rodgers trade went down. It was timely for the show. We were able to kind of dissect it and break down what we thought Aaron Rodgers' fantasy value would be. As far as Jordan Love, I think this tells me that, and we kind of touched on it last week. We talked a little bit about Jordan Love, but that he's going to have to perform fairly decent for him to keep that spot. Like, they're not going to give him as long a leash as like a rookie, as a literal rookie, because this is Jordan Love's 2023 will be Jordan Love's fourth NFL season. So while he hadn't started much, I just don't see the Packers giving him that long of a leash if he really struggles. I don't know about you, but I think he could do well, but I'm a little skeptical.
Yeah, it's a really weird year in Green Bay, and I'm excited to kind of see what they do with Jordan Love and how they handle it. I'd like to think for his sake, he has a little bit longer leash than what it's being made out to be, but I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty. He still doesn't have a ton of weapons there. They're probably going to lean heavily on the running game. I guess he'll kind of just have to do the job of a game manager, but I don't know how well that'll go in Green Bay, given they have a lot of holes elsewhere. Aaron Rodgers
Yeah.
has been a nice safety blanket. So I'd like to see him commit to him a little longer, but I think, like you mentioned earlier, this was a necessary step.
Right. And I think really, I mean, I say like this year, if he struggles this year, it's okay because then he's got one more year. And I don't think the Packers are really expecting much out of this season. But if 2024 comes around and he hadn't made any progress, he's out of there. Let's be real. The NFL is a very what have you done for me lately business. And so Jordan Love, you've got 2 years. We'll see if he can get it done. Aaron Rodgers' first year in Green Bay was kind of up and down as the starter. His second season there, I think it was 2009, is when he really blossomed and became a Pro Bowl caliber QB. It was kind of funny because in that year, Brett Favre moved back to the NFC North with the Vikings. And if it wasn't for that, shoot, the Packers probably would have made a deep run in the playoffs that year. I think they had to face Minnesota in the playoffs or so. Them or Dallas, or it was like, it was just where Rodgers though was. You could see it. You could see that Rodgers was a star in the making.
Mm-hmm.
Where Jordan Love, not sure what to expect, but should be interesting nonetheless. Let's talk NBA here. Some DFS picks before we get into the rookie breakdown here. And a guy I'm targeting for tonight's slate, y'all, is Gabe Vincent for the Miami Heat. Even if Jimmy Butler plays, because without Tyler Hero there, they've had to have some other guards step up as scorers, and Vincent's been that guy. I know Kyle Lowry had a really big game one, but let's be real, Kyle Lowry is not what he used to be. I mean, he's a decent role player, good piece for the Heat to have, but as far as fantasy, we want guys that are capable of scoring, and Gabe Vincent lately has been putting up points, and he's still at a pretty good price there, 5,300. Pretty affordable piece. And if Butler doesn't go, which I think Butler is going to go, he's got that dog in him. He's going to tough it out, but he might not be 100% though. I mean, when you got a bum ankle like that, it's going to be hard to be as explosive no matter how much dog you have in you. It's like, I mean, if you got that much, if your ankle's bothering you that much, it could be make him a little limited to where Vincent probably going to have to step up because we know what Bam Adebayo is going to do, and he's priced as such, so he's not really a value. But we're looking for value here, and to me, Gabe Vincent offers that.
Yeah, for sure. And, at this stage, you really have to look for value because it's a limited field, so you're not going to get all those guys that you'd get in the regular season or even in the first round. So that's why I've gone with a guy with a little more just recognizability, I guess, with Austin Reeves. He's taken on this whole like media sensation role for the Lakers, and he's really taken on a new role with the team as well. And he's looked a lot better. He's gotten a lot more minutes recently. So I think, with him playing 30, 40 minutes a game in these playoffs, Austin Reeves has got some tremendous value. He's playing better basketball than he has all season, averaging 18 points over the last 10 games. He's racking up the numbers. So I think at 6,000, Austin Reeves is a guy you got to take a flyer on.
Yeah, I feel you on that because with tonight's matchup, the Lakers are going to need some guard play to step up, going against Golden State. In Golden State, Curry and Thompson are going to be jacking up the threes. And I'm not saying Austin Reeves is going to outscore LeBron, but I definitely think he's going to be able to chip in a lot of points there. He's been their lead scorer before. He's basically their number 3 option. You got LeBron and AD, but you're not getting them at a value. Everyone knows who they are. Their prices are through the roof, and rightfully so. More so LeBron. I don't know, AD, I know he does a lot defensively, but as far as fantasy, I'm like, I usually don't have him in my lineups, even if I can afford a big star like that. But yeah, Austin Reeves, somebody that's a pretty solid value there at 6,000. So should be an interesting slate tonight. We've got Heat Knicks followed by Lakers Warriors. So should be cool. There's only 8 teams left now. We've got the 76ers Celtics on the other side of the East, and then drawing a blank here, the Nuggets Suns. Yeah, there we go. Nuggets Suns on the other side. They cashed first on daily best bets last night. Had the Nuggets to cover, and they're able to do that. One more NBA question for you, man, about the Lakers Warriors matchup. I don't know about you. I got the Lakers tonight plus 4.5. I almost took the Warriors at home, but I think LeBron's going to keep that thing close.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm very glad I didn't have to do the best bets on this one.
Yeah, it was a tough
But
day
I
today.
do generally, I do like your pick with the Lakers plus 4.5. I think they're more well rested, and I think this Lakers team's hungry. I think the Warriors are in for a shock tonight. They're gonna get a team who is really, really well coached and really battle tested over the last few weeks.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, LeBron just seems to really be in that playoff mode. This is the best I've seen LeBron play since the bubble.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's been 3 years now. It's 2020. So yeah, LeBron is recharged, refocused, and that's a scary thought. You know, even though he's over 35 now, he's still one of the top 10, maybe probably top 5 players in the game. It's crazy that someone his age is able to still do that, but here we are. So let's move on. Unless you have any NBA thoughts, comments, let's move on to these rookie quarterbacks. We're going to start off by talking about where the guys landed and projecting their fantasy football value, both for the short term and the long term. So we begin with Bryce Young, goes to the Carolina Panthers first overall. No surprises there. That's what we expected. And among quarterbacks, he has the lowest odds to win Offensive Rookie of the Year there at plus 400. Those odds courtesy of Caesar Sportsbook. And my initial take on Bryce Young is that he's going to go through some growing pains, but by the second half of this season, I think he could be pretty solid. He's going to have a lot of new weapons there. He got some veterans, though, which helps. He's got Adam Thielen and DJ Chark, as well as a solid veteran tight end in Hayden Hurst. So it's not like he's going in there with a bunch of just young weapons as well. He'll at least have some experience there in that receiving core. Backfield solid, too, with Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard. And he's got a young receiver to grow up with there in Jonathan Mingo from Ole Miss. So it looks like a pretty solid 3-wide set, solid tight end, solid backfield, just solid. You know, I think he'll be in single quarterback leagues. He'll be a guy that you could stream every now and then. Probably not an every week starter because he doesn't run enough. We'll get to the running guy here in a couple slides. He got a guy in this class that can freaking run like crazy. But Young isn't that guy to where he's gonna have to do it with his arm. And another thing that's kind of is not that great for fantasy with Young is the Panthers have a solid defense, where I don't think Young's going to be in as a whole lot of shootouts. He'll have a fair share of shootouts probably, like maybe against the Saints, although the Saints more defensive oriented too. So then with the division being just not that explosive right now, the NFC South that is, I don't really see Young having to duke it out too much, but he's somebody. We know what he can do. I mean, he's got all the skills as far as making the throws. He's got the IQ. He's got a great football IQ to where I think he'll be able to hold his weight as a rookie. So for super flex leagues, definitely keep an eye on this guy. He could be a solid second quarterback a lot of weeks. So for single quarterback, probably not worth a selection until the very end when you're just taking a chance on a backup.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. My one thing, and I guess my one concern with Bryce Young is how are the Carolina Panthers going to run an offense with all these new weapons? My gut tells me they're going to use the workhorse that is Miles Sanders a lot. So that's where I think Bryce Young's fantasy value is going to take a hit. But as you mentioned, This isn't your stereotypical number one overall selection team. You know, he's got those veteran weapons all throughout. And so if the chips, we'll let them fall where they may, but I think Bryce Young has the recipe for success there. My one worry is just whether or not he's going to be the main source of offense. I don't think he will be personally, at least not in the first half of the season. So I think I'm going to err on the side of caution with you, and I'll say wait until the second half and we'll see. But yeah, super flex, he's worth a flyer, but one quarterback leagues, I'm staying away.
Right, because I mean, look at guys like Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence last year, and they were in their second seasons, and they still were going through growing pains in the first half. But yeah, by the second half, they were freaking must-start quarterbacks. So yeah, as a rookie, it could be kind of rough for Bryce Young. My one pushback against Miles Sanders being a workhorse, I know they signed him to be a workhorse. But throughout his career, Miles Sanders has not been very reliable. Last season, he was pretty solid. It was a contract year, though. Now that he got his payday, I'm not saying he's going to quit trying, but as far as, like, I shouldn't have said that probably because it's not really having to do with because he got paid. I think all these athletes, that's kind of a bad thing people want to say. Oh, if someone gets paid, they quit trying. I don't think it's that. I just think it's like when you've had a lot of injuries throughout your career like he has, it's just an odds thing. It's like the odds of him picking up something are a little higher because it's like a sports injury tracker site where you kind of go through the history. And I haven't done a thorough check on Miles Sanders, but I'm pretty sure he's had at least 3 or 4 fairly significant injuries so far in his career. A lot of them are kind of nagging kind of things, but those add up. I mean, if you keep picking up hamstring injuries and stuff like that, look at Julio Jones, the way his career kind of just fell off the wagon. I mean, if you keep picking up these soft tissue kind of injuries, it can be trouble. So I'm thinking they lean on Sanders at first, but then if he suffers his inevitable injury at that point, it'll be more the Bryce Young show. So yeah, definitely don't stress about getting Bryce Young on your team in single QB, but in super flex, he's somebody I think is a good stash. And then for dynasty, though, I think he's a really good dynasty hold.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So let's move on to your Texans QB, Gabe. You got your wish. No Will Levis.
Yep.
It's CJ Stroud. The Ohio State kid lands with the Texans. They did a very good job with the smoke screens. I must admit, that was very well executed because when they went up to the podium, I was convinced they were going Will Anderson. I wasn't buying the Will Levis thing, which they ended up taking Will Anderson the very next pick. So they didn't do as good a job with that smoke screen. They were definitely interested in Will Anderson, but the CJ Stroud smoke screen, they played that perfectly because they had everyone convinced that, oh, it's going to be Will Levis. Because I was thinking, well, they'll probably take Will Anderson second and then hope Will Levis falls to 12, which if that he would have. I don't think anyone was going to take Will Levis. I mean, he fell to the second round. So if the Texans really wanted Will Levis, he could have been the number 12 pick. But that wasn't the case. Went with CJ Stroud, and to me, that was the right decision because that cognitive test stuff, we don't know what to believe with that. That's speculation. We don't know if that's true or not. And even if it is, like, what's to say that that's going to affect him at the NFL level? A lot of what the guys that struggle at the NFL level is that they just don't put in the effort, like as we see, like guys like even a guy like Kyler Murray with film study. It's like you can be a great athlete, but if you're not studying, you can have some trouble. So as long as CJ Stroud stays committed, which they haven't had any concerns surrounding his character, like he's clearly got the ability to execute, even if he doesn't have quite the IQ of Bryce Young. And he's bigger, he's got a bigger arm. But I think he's a little more of a raw prospect in that he struggles. They're showing his film breakdown. He struggles a lot when pressured. So I think that's going to be a recipe for trouble as a rookie. Like I think as a rookie, Stroud, yeah, he'll start at some point, but I think Case Keenum might win the week 1 job over there in Houston. I think Davis Mills, I'm guessing, is going to get dumped to where or traded or something. So like, I think Case Keenum might start off. But I know you're the Texans guy, Gabe, but my initial take is that even in super flex, I probably don't want Stroud because, to me, the Texans offense is such a work in progress. Got a lot of new weapons there. I think it's going to take a while for that to all come together.
Yeah, you made an interesting point. The one thing you said, well, I'll start with this. I think CJ Stroud is the best pure passer of any of the quarterbacks in this draft, and I know that might sound crazy given how Bryce Young plays, but for anyone who hasn't watched CJ Stroud, this dude is an absolute stud. So I don't want to say the Texans have a great offensive line because they're probably going to start a rookie at center, which obviously is going to be a question mark. But they've got good anchor pieces on both sides of the line, so CJ Stroud isn't going to get pressured as much as some of these other rookies are. The Texans have one of the more established O-lines in the league.
Laramie Tunsil.
Yeah, amongst the teams. They just made Laramie Tunsil the highest paid tackle in the league, which was an excellent move knowing they had to go get a rookie. But as you mentioned, they don't really have all those receiving threats. They added Tank Dell in the draft. I think he's an excellent slot ad, but outside, you've got a bunch of aging veterans and a bunch of unproven guys. So CJ Stroud, he's gonna struggle to find guys that are open, and that's just the reality of it. But at the same time, whereas we had that question mark with the Panthers, will they use their running game? Will they lean on that heavily? And that's why we won't kind of play Bryce Young in these early fantasy leagues or early fantasy seasons. You're going to want to stay away from Stroud early on solely because the Texans under DeMeco Ryans, he said it before, and it's going to happen. They're going to pound the rock. And they've got the offensive line. They've got the running backs to do so. So I think there are some good ads in Dalton Schultz and Devin Singletary that can help Stroud succeed. But I'm staying away early season. Same thing as Bryce Young.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I feel like at least with Bryce Young, got a little more – things are a little more established there in Carolina as far as the weapons. Where, I mean, in Houston, they signed Robert Woods. Mm-hmm. But outside of him, you don't really have any trustworthy veterans. Dalton Schultz, but I guess it's kind of similar. But I guess there's a little concern that I feel like I just think Young's a little bit more pro-ready than Stroud. I mean, being in that Nick Saban offense and stuff. Or I think Stroud's got a really bright future. I like him for Dynasty.
Me too.
But with the Texans, it's like, will the Texans – I'm not trying to be mean here, Gabe, but will the Texans just – will they ever figure it out? I mean, they've been in such a tailspin since the Deshaun Watson thing. Hopefully this is the start of a turnaround because they've got to hit on this rebuild here. DeMeco Ryans, bringing in Will Anderson and Stroud. Like this is a crucial turnaround. Not like this year, you don't necessarily have to have a winning season, but you got to show growth, I feel like.
Yeah, I think they will. So, I mean, I completely agree with you. Long term, I think CJ Stroud's going to be a stud in Dynasty. So, if he's still there in your mid to late first round rookie drafts, I would take a flyer on him in Dynasty. But I would stay away until they at least start to show some progress on the offensive side of the ball.
Right. Yeah, got to get the chemistry going with the weapons. And moving on now to Anthony Richardson, who the Colts selected 4th overall. So he had 3 quarterbacks go within the first 4 picks. Not really surprising there. I was thinking the Colts, like this is another good smoke screen, because they were all like, oh, Will Levis. I feel like Will Levis was like the scapegoat. People would, oh, yeah, we really like Will Levis. Yeah, to get teams thinking, oh, maybe hoping a team would be stupid and trade up for Will Levis. That's, just trying to play the chess game there, which I think the AFC South teams were doing that, hoping Tennessee would bite and move up, but Tennessee played it smart and just let Levis fall in their lap in the second round, which we'll get to Levis here in a minute. But Richardson, I really like for fantasy right away, even if he has to start because of that rushing upside. Because with the Colts, they're going to let him run wild. And with Shane Steichen calling the plays there, he was the guy that helped Jalen Hurts really take off. Like, even as a rookie, like Hurts wasn't that great of a passer up until last year, in which he became the best quarterback in the league outside of Mahomes. But like Richardson is someone that he's going to be raw. It's going to be ugly, I think, as a rookie, as far as people are going to be like, holy crap, this guy is not NFL ready. He stinks. Why did they draft him? He's a bust, blah, blah, blah. But you're going to have to play the waiting game here. You're going to have to play the long game if you're a Colts fan. But if you're a fantasy owner, it's like, well, I'll take it because if he's running for 60, 70, 80 yards a lot of weeks, who cares if he's not throwing much? I mean, if he's been able to rack up those rushing yards and find the end zone, which we know Jalen Hurts was the king of getting those rushing touchdowns as a quarterback, like I think Richardson will be okay. And another thing that's going to help him is going to the Colts is that they've got an all-pro running back in Jonathan Taylor. With Jonathan Taylor back there, defenses are going to have to respect the run, where they should have some wide open receivers where even if Richardson's not the most polished passer, he should be able to get some passes complete. I mean, the dude's wide open. I mean, this guy isn't just, I mean, he was a Division I college quarterback in the SEC, so people want to knock him. I mean, he was having to face tough competition and didn't have a whole lot of starting experience. Like I said, very raw prospect. But for fantasy, this is what we want, dual threat quarterback, to where in the Colts have said he's probably going to start very early on in the season. Minshew might get a few starts early. They signed Gardner Minshew as like a bridge guy. He might get a few starts until Richardson's ready, but they're going to push Richardson in there pretty quickly, I feel like, because I don't think the Colts are super worried about, they're kind of like the Texans. They're not super worried about contending this year with a new coach and stuff. So I'm thinking out of all these guys, Richardson among quarterbacks he's the best one from a fantasy football perspective.
Great minds think alike, Spencer. I would completely agree with you. I think if you're in a one quarterback, just year-to-year league, no dynasty, no keepers, none of that stuff, just playing casual fantasy football, Anthony Richardson is your guy this year because of that rushing ability. And, out of all of the three that we named, I think he potentially has the best receiving core. I love what they did drafting Josh Downs, and I love that he's got Jonathan Taylor, and he's got an offensive line that really underperformed last year, but they've shown that they can play up to standard in the NFL. So if everything goes right, Anthony Richardson's got all the pieces in place to succeed. Obviously, you're going to have those growing pains that you mentioned. He's going to turn the ball over some when he throws it, but this dude's got a cannon arm to where one big completion can wipe off an interception. He's got the rushing ability that'll rack up points. I think Anthony Richardson I'm not going to say he's going to be the best quarterback of the three long-term or even in reality, but I'm saying fantasy-wise, Anthony Richardson is the play for the first year.
Yeah, for 100%. Yeah, I still think Bryce Young. I mean, Bryce Young is my favorite for reality purposes. I think he's going to be, as Jim said, a pain in the Saints keister for many years. But, I think, and I know you really like Stroud, Gabe, but as Richardson's in one, I think he'll have flashes. But, yeah, I think long-term it's a little riskier because he's so raw. It's like we don't know how he'll develop. And I just feel like even if he hits the ceiling, he'll probably just be more of like a guy that's like, I think of a good comp. Like I don't think he's got quite the ceiling of Lamar. I mean, athletically he does, obviously, but as far as he'll probably be more,
he'll be a Josh Allen type in a sense. I don't think he'll be as explosive from the off, but I think he's got a little bit of Josh Allen in him.
I hear you. Yeah, I was like, even someone not. I'm trying to think of somebody that's not quite as good, like not quite on that level. But it's like I feel like a lot of times the guys aren't quite on that level because they don't have that athletic ability. So I guess if he hits his ceiling, he can be elite. I'm just kind of concerned that he won't be able to do that, considering that in Indy it's kind of like it's like with JT and stuff like. I'm not sure if he'll ever be able to be up there with Hurts and those guys, but we'll see. We'll see, because I think he's someone that definitely has that kind of potential. And a lot of times with fantasy, you just got to go with potential because all these guys are unproven. So a lot of times you just got to roll the dice. And that's what I plan on doing with Richardson, especially in those season-long leagues. But Will Levis going to the Tennessee Titans, he'll probably get to start at some point this season, but not going to be a week one starter for sure. The evidence by him having fairly long odds to win offensive rookie of the year. The others all very much in the mix because, the books think they're going to be starters from week one, or Will Levis having to be behind Ryan Tannehill. He's probably won't get to see the field in the second half of the year. And he's someone in that offense with Derrick Henry. That's not pretty. I don't like this at all. No intrigue for me here in season long, even in Dynasty. I don't see Will Levis being a thing. I think he might start somewhat, a few games for Tennessee, but I think he's their next Jake Locker. I don't see him being worth a damn long term. Maybe I'll be wrong because he's got good athletic ability, but not nearly at the level of Richardson. And I don't know, he just doesn't. He reminds me of Baker Mayfield. He's like a bigger version of Baker Mayfield. But I don't see that translating well because you can say, oh, I'm motivated. I got this chip on my shoulder. But if you've also got a lot of attitude issues to go with that, then it kind of I just don't really like what I've seen from Levis so far.
And I apologize for not hitting on this point sooner. I'm pretty sure Irsay came out and said that Anthony Richardson will start. Bryce Young is a given to start, and I think C.J. Stroud will absolutely start for the Texans. I don't think they brought in Case Keenum to be a starter. I don't think the fan base can handle that, and nor can Casario. In Tennessee, Will Levis will not start. It will be Ryan Tannehill. And despite every bad bit that I said about Will Levis, I actually really like him landing in Tennessee just because he's not going to be forced to start right away. He's played in that pro style offense in college, but he's very raw. I think he gets the benefit of the doubt. He'll get to sit behind Ryan Tannehill, develop a little bit. Now, what Tennessee does in the second half of the season is completely up to them. If it were me, I would just keep on keeping on with Ryan Tannehill for the year, as painful as it is. It's been time for that dude to leave, but now you've got a young guy that you really can't throw into this team. I mean, the Tennessee Titans might just have the worst receiving core in football. And if you're going to throw Will Levis out there right away, it's just going to be turnover city.
Yeah.
And I think that's one way to turn him into a Jake Locker, like you said. So as far as fantasy value this year for Will Levis, there is none. Absolutely none. Long term, that'll depend on the Tennessee Titans. I think there's potential for a good quarterback there. I actually love that he fell into the second round because I think that's more where his talent is. He was not a top quarterback in this draft, but he's got the huge arm, he's got the athleticism. So I really do think in Dynasty, it's just too risky for me to take a flyer on because of the fact that we're banking on a franchise to build up around him. I don't know if they'll do that. They might just tear it down, and Will Levis will be kind of their scapegoat that they trot out there until they get another top pick. But
right,
no
like
fantasy value
Wilson.
this year.
Right, yeah, for sure. So we'll move on now to our dynasty stashes. And we got a question about the long-term potential of the Saints quarterback drafted Jake Haener. And that's a good segue because that's actually the young quarterback that I think is in a good spot that I'm going to stash in my dynasty leagues, because with Jake Haener, he goes where, like he said, a spot like where you don't have to worry about having the pressure to start. And if you're a little bit of an underdeveloped prospect, that's a good thing. Haener went to a small school there, Fresno State, so probably needs a year or two on the bench to learn to get up to speed. And he'll get to learn from a guy that went to his alma mater there in Derek Carr. And I feel like Derek Carr, he's got enough of a contract where he won't feel threatened by this kid, where he'll mentor him. I really do. I think Derek Carr is the kind of guy that I would love to mentor Jake Haener, because Derek Carr knows he's probably going to play more than 4 or 5 more years, to where if Haener develops, for the next 2 or 3, he'll either stay with the Saints as a backup or go start somewhere else. Or if Carr would unexpectedly retire or want out from the Saints, then you could, have Haener ready to start for the Saints potentially. So, I mean, you've got a lot of different pathways to him getting on the field. And he's somebody that I've heard some people pro-comp him to Drew Brees, and while that is probably a bit rich considering how Drew Brees turned out, I feel like, though, it's worth a shot having him because he's a little undersized, but he's got a good arm, makes the throws. Bryce Young, I mean, this kid's at least 6 feet. Hell, Bryce Young was 5'10", was the first overall pick of the draft, which goes to show nowadays size just doesn't really matter. Not like it used to with the way the game's changed, with it being more about speed and finesse as opposed to power and physicality. So Jake Haener, I think, is a good stash. And I see you've got Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a potential dual threat there, landing in Cleveland.
Yeah, I really like Dorian Thompson-Robinson coming out. DTR is what they call him for short. I think he is stylistically the most similar quarterback to what they have in Deshaun Watson there in Cleveland. And let's be honest with ourselves. Deshaun Watson was not the Deshaun Watson we're used to seeing last year. And understandably, he's got everything going on off the field. The dude hasn't played in like 2 years. So I think this is a really sneaky good pickup by Cleveland. DTR is a guy who over the last few years, we've seen his numbers go up and up. And it's not just those flashy college numbers either. It's the important statistics that you look at. Like his passer rating jumped from 60, or his completion percentage jumped up from 62 to 70, essentially, in his last year, his COVID senior season. It's a dude who doesn't turn the ball over much. He's, like you mentioned, a true dual threat. Had 39 touchdowns, only 10 picks last year. So had like 600 rushing yards as well. This is a guy who could potentially break out if Deshaun Watson doesn't return to form. He just needs to develop to his potential. And I think if he sits and mentors Watson, who, say what you will about him, the dude is talented and knows how to play the game of football, DTR could potentially have a shot. If maybe not in Cleveland, maybe elsewhere.
But maybe he could get a trade.
Shot, he could succeed.
Yeah, maybe if like Watson would get hurt, he could start a few games if he shows some flashes. Maybe then he could parlay that into a trade elsewhere. So
as far as value goes, in 5th round, I think the Cleveland Browns got great value in DTR.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because they're kind of stuck with Watson with the contract they paid him. But yeah, it could be interesting. Sometimes you just got to take a chance on somebody, even if the landing spot isn't that great, which for neither of these guys is that great. Because hell, if you're talking just pure like good landing spot, Stetson Bennett. That was a great landing spot there with the Rams, considering Matthew Stafford looks to be about on his last leg. Mm-hmm. But I just want no part of Stetson Bennett. That's got disaster written all over it.
Brandon Weeden 2.0.
Exactly. Yeah, and he's just for someone his age, he just doesn't seem like. He got carried by that Georgia team. He doesn't seem like a guy that's didn't seem like they have very good leadership qualities, but we'll see. I'm not touching him, but might be able to start relatively soon there for the LA Rams. So let's move on now, though, to fantasy baseball waiver wire. And if y'all have any other fantasy football rookie questions, make sure to drop them in the chat. We've only got a few more minutes left here on the Fantasy Roundup, brought to you by Caesar Sportsbook. But for fantasy baseball, I'm going with Jack Sawinski from the Pittsburgh Pirates. And we both got Pirates here, Gabe, because they've been the biggest surprise by far out of anyone. And then all MLB, I'd say. You look at the NL Central, my Cardinals, they're dead last. And I'm a loyal fan. I stick with my teams through thick and thin, thin and thin. Hopefully it gets thick again. It's been really thin this year for the Cardinals. My gosh. But Pirates looking nice there. And Jack Sawinski, a big part of that. The reason I like him for fantasy, because he's got a power-speed combo. He's been hitting bombs and also stealing bases. He's been hitting for average, and he's been a 5-tool contributor. And he's been valuable in any format, rotisserie points. We're a month in now, so you can't just say it's a fluke. I think he's somebody that is going to have a nice season.
Yeah, for sure. And the Pirates, like you mentioned, are playing really great ball. So I think definitely it's one of those guys that only rostered in under 20% of leagues. So why not take a flyer on him for now? There's been, as we've mentioned in each show, there's a lot of injuries going around. That's the reason we do this little segment.
Right. Now, so you got a starting pitcher there, Vince Velasquez, who's been on a heater lately.
Yeah, if you had told 16 or 17-year-old Gabe Henderson at Minute Maid Park that Astros prospect Vince Velasquez would be subject to his fantasy baseball waiver wire target segment in the year 2023, I would have laughed at you. Vince Velasquez. I forgot
he was an Astros prospect.
2015, yeah, he made his major league debut. Watched him a few times with those 2015 Astros teams. He's bounced around everywhere, and he's really not been appreciated for the work he's done. He's kind of that dirty guy who eats innings. Not always consistent, but always willing to just get his hands dirty and eat innings, do whatever you need, come out of the bullpen, start. He's really a jack of all trades. So, Vince Velasquez, that's how you end up on the Pittsburgh Pirates in 2023. And I think they love that attitude. And Vince Velasquez has been really good recently. He's got a 3.06 ERA this season. And let's take into account 3 of his 8 runs allowed this year at Coors Field. So they've kind of got an asterisk next to it. So essentially you're looking at a 2-something ERA guy who's gone 6 or more innings in 4 of his last 5 starts. His strikeout numbers are up. He doesn't give up a ton of hits, doesn't give up a ton of home runs. This is a dude who's pitching well right now on a team that's winning. And let's be honest, Spencer, the thing that I love most in fantasy baseball is those pitchers who qualify as starters and relievers because of the positional flexibility there and the ways you can manipulate your rotation week to week in these matchups. And that's what Vince Velasquez is.
Yeah, for sure, because he's somebody, I don't know for the long term if he's going to keep up his current pace, but he's somebody, he's been on a heater lately, as he could start him for the short term. And then even like as the year goes on, if it's a matchup thing, you can maybe have him on your bench. And if it's a good matchup, plug him in. And you say you got the position flexibility. So yeah, pitching's always worth keeping an eye on because it's so fickle. Another young Pirates pitcher I like is Roansy Contreras. I just picked him back up in one of my leagues and feel like he probably has more of a ceiling than Velasquez. Might be a little more risky as far as he's younger, less proven, but I think he's worth a pickup in case he keeps up his hot pace. And then the prospect that we talked about in the headlines, Bryce Miller, gets a perfect spot start tonight against the A's. Yeah. So it's like I think he's gonna do well there to start. And we got a question here. See if we can get Mason Wynn on the show. Oh man, that'd be something. What do you think of that, Gabe? You think that could be possible?
Probably not. I haven't talked to him since high school. It'd be cool to have him on the show. I'd love to talk to him. Star prospect, and I think he's gonna one day he's gonna be a guy that we're gonna have in these segments. If you're not picking up at the beginning of the year, this dude's gonna be a stud.
Right, yeah, because he's somebody that might be the spark the Cardinals need to get back on track. Because right now who's a shortstop right now? Tommy Edman, Brendan Donovan. I feel like Brendan Donovan, no disrespect to him, but he's more of a utility player. So you could push him back into that role, put Edman in second base, which is his natural position, and then have Wynn at shortstop. Yeah, I think the Cardinals, they need to make that move here soon. And also bring Jordan Walker back up. I could have made that my rant. I was so mad that they sent Jordan Walker back to the minors. The Cardinals are just a disaster this year. I don't even know. Hopefully Mason can help turn the ship around, but it's been rough. It's been rough as a Cardinals fan. But here's my rant, though, for y'all here as we close out on the Fantasy Roundup. Going to rant about this whole Kenneth Walker thing, y'all, because it's next week. This is a little preview for next week. We're going to be breaking down running back values. And one of the names we're going to be talking about there is Seahawks rookie Zach Charbonnet, who was drafted in the second round to be a compliment to Kenneth Walker. But as soon as that happened, everyone, I'm going to say everyone, but all the idiots on Twitter panicked and we're like, oh my God, Kenneth Walker, he's done. They drafted Charbonnet. Oh no, it's over. His fantasy value is in the toilet. It's just, it's a committee. It's dead. Blah. So guess what, y'all? If I can breathe here, I'm going to suffocate through all that crap. And that's why I hate even going on Twitter these days, because it's just overreaction city. But anyway, get off my lawn moment there. But now that I've calm down here, Kenneth Walker will be just fine, in my opinion, because there's going to be enough to go around for both him and Charbonnet. In today's NFL, pretty much every backfield's a committee backfield, especially for a team like Seattle that runs. Pete Carroll, they're not going to change their philosophy. They also drafted Jackson Smith and Jigba, but just because they drafted him, that doesn't mean they're going to all of a sudden become this like pass-first team, and they beefed up their defense where they'll probably be able to run the ball even more this year. So I don't see Kenneth Walker's fantasy value dropping much because he wasn't a pass catcher to begin with. They needed Charbonnet as someone who could catch passes out of the backfield because Kenneth Walker, let's be honest, is bricks for hands. I mean, he's one of the worst pass-catching backs in the game, but he's a big back, a tough runner, very similar to Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb. So he's a guy, even though he won't be getting those receptions, he could still challenge to lead the league in rushing. He's a guy I think that could get 1,200, maybe even 1,500 yards on the ground. And if he's getting double-digit touchdowns, which will be an explosive offense, he'll definitely still be the goal line back, being the bigger back. I think he's still an RB1, maybe not a top 5 running back like we were thinking, but he's still like the way Chubb's been is like, a top 10 to 12 running back, which still very valuable. And if anything, this Charbonnet pick might help Walker stay healthy because if he was having to play every snap, then he's probably more prone to injury. So I don't hate this at all. I think it's kind of good that they drafted a running back to kind of help KW out.
Let me just say this, Spencer. Anyone who was complaining on Twitter about Kenneth Walker's fantasy value going down because of this is too young to remember Thunder and Lightning at USC. We see how that worked out.
Right.
They had a lot of success. And who was their head coach? Pete Carroll.
Pete Carroll. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it was that. Don't know Reggie Bush and Lindale White. That was, man, those were the days. That was when I was just getting into football. And yeah, I remember I was so excited when Reggie came to the Saints. Unfortunately, didn't have quite the impact we were thinking, but still had a solid career as a Saint. Wasn't a total bust like a lot of people kind of remember him as, because he was just, they had so much expectations and didn't quite live up to him. Where Lindale White he was pretty much a bust, but.
Yeah, but it's just the style that Pete Carroll loves. He's
a run first guy.
Yeah, they're going to be just fine.
Exactly. I think they'll both do pretty well. But before we sign off here, y'all make sure to go check out our poll question. Go vote on the Saints draft. Jerry dropped his Saints draft grade in. If you haven't done so already, go vote on that and let us know what you think. Saints draft picks here: Brissy, Foskey, Kendre Miller, who we'll be talking about next week on the running backs episode. Then Saldivari, the guard from Old Dominion, Jake Hayner, who we talked about today, the quarterback, Jordan Howden, the safety, and then A.T. Perry, who might be sneaky there, 6th-round wide receiver. Saints have had success in the past with late-round wide receivers. Look at Marcus Colston. And here are the odds for the Saints futures here. You got the Super Bowl odds, win total, to win the South and to make the playoffs. Man, to make the playoffs minus 180 and to win the South plus 120. I'd much rather to win the South, because I think if the Saints are going to make the playoffs, it's going to be because they won the South. Like, I don't see any NFC South teams getting a wild card. So I know this is the fantasy show, but we'll give you all that little betting tip here before we sign off. If you're going to bet a Saints future, bet them to win the South. Better value.
Absolutely.
Faux show. So we'll that's going to be it for us today. Appreciate everyone that tuned in here. And, we'll be back next week with the running backs episode. So until then, this has been Spencer the Guru Urquhart and Gabe Henderson. See y'all later.